Welcome to this explainer. I was looking into the mechanics of language learning recently, and I stumbled upon something that literally blew my mind. If you've ever felt totally stuck trying to improve your spoken English because you just don't know how to practice by yourself, you are absolutely going to love this. We've all been there, right? You read the materials, you meticulously memorize endless lists of vocabulary, but when it actually comes time to open your mouth and speak out loud, the words just don't flow. It's incredibly frustrating. But today, we're going to unpack this brilliant concept called the imitation method, and we'll build a step-by-step plan for you to start practicing today.
Let me ask you a question that's probably the absolute biggest source of anxiety for anyone trying to learn a language. What if you just don't have someone to talk to in English? That's the ultimate roadblock, isn't it? It is so incredibly common to feel stranded because maybe you don't live in an English-speaking country. You might watch English movies or listen to English music all day long, but you just don't have a native speaking partner sitting right across from you to practice with every single day. And without that partner, it usually kills a learner's motivation entirely. You start to think, how can I possibly practice speaking if I'm literally all by myself in my bedroom? Well, the method we're looking at today completely solves that puzzle.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quick roadmap. First, we'll explore the speaking partner problem. Then, we'll figure out what is true imitation. After that, we'll look at the easy-to-hard approach, followed by your daily practice plan, and finally, we'll break down exactly why this actually works.
Starting off with Section 1, the speaking partner problem, passive versus active learning.
So, we already know that if you really want to improve your speaking skills, you have to actually practice speaking. Obviously, right? But there is a huge difference between active and passive learning. Sitting at your desk, staring at a textbook, or studying grammar rules until your eyes cross, well, it feels productive, it feels safe, but it will never actually make you a better speaker. Even just listening to English audio alone passively just isn't enough. Yes, listening is important, for sure, but if you want to speak, you need an active output. Reading and listening build your knowledge, but they do not build the specific muscle memory required for speech. It's kind of like reading a book about how to ride a bicycle and expecting to just hop right on and win the Tour de France. No way. To speak, your brain desperately needs to practice generating those linguistic pathways in real time.
Moving on to Section 2, what is true imitation? The paradigm shift.
And this brings us to a really powerful technique that completely bypasses the need for a tutor. Imitation, in this context, means listening to a conversation, a story, or a speech, and then trying to deliver it in your own words. Now, we really need to redefine what this word means in language learning, because usually when people hear imitation, they immediately think of just trying to mimic a native speaker's accent. But actually, it's so much deeper than just adopting a British or American accent. True imitation is about internalizing syntax and vocabulary. It's about understanding the core message of what's being said, digesting it, and then challenging yourself to express that exact same thought out loud.
So, the crucial point is this. We are absolutely not talking about repeating after native speakers using their exact same words just to get your pronunciation right. If you do that, you're just acting like a parrot. And a parrot can make all the right sounds, but it has absolutely no idea what it's saying. We want your brain to act as an engine, not an echo chamber. You aren't blindly parroting what a speaker says, you're actively processing their ideas in your head and then doing the heavy lifting of generating the language yourself. You're internalizing the meaning and then basically forcing your brain to construct the grammatical framework to express it.
Let's actually walk through a practical example of how these mental gymnastics work. Imagine you're listening to a speaker tell a story, and their original phrase is, "When I was a child, my parents liked to pretend, like many other parents, that Santa Claus would bring us presents at Christmas." Now, if you're using the imitation method, you actively shift the perspective as you speak it back. So your imitated phrase becomes, "When he was a child, his parents liked to pretend that Santa Claus would bring them presents at Christmas." Do you see the mechanics there? You take a first-person story, process the meaning, and deliver it in the third person. By forcing yourself to change I to he and my to his, you're actively stitching the grammar together on the fly. Your brain is fully engaged in language production, and the best part, you don't need someone else in the room to prompt you.
Which leads us to Section 3, the easy-to-hard approach, structuring your progress.
This easy-to-hard method is built on the concept of progressive training. That basically means starting with something easy and then steadily increasing the difficulty to literally force yourself to get better. Think about it kind of like weightlifting. If you walk into a gym every single day and only ever lift 5-pound weights, well, your muscles will eventually stop growing. You'll hit a wall. And the exact same thing happens with fluency. If you only ever repeat short, simple, easy sentences, your language skills are going to plateau. To build real, lasting fluency, You have to constantly push the boundary of what your brain can process and reproduce.
Let's jump into Section 4, your daily practice plan, step by step.
This is honestly the most exciting part of this explainer because this is where we build a concrete step-by-step plan you can start using literally today. First, you're going to open up a YouTube video or a podcast where someone is speaking clearly. Step 1 is to start small. Listen to just a 3 to 5 second phrase. Pause the audio and immediately try to imitate what they said, remembering to shift that perspective if they're telling a personal story. Do this over and over with short phrases. It might feel a bit clunky at first, but stick with it until that short burst of language flows smoothly. Once you nail that, you graduate to step 2. Now you're going to let the audio play longer. Wait until the speaker completes an entire thought or a full paragraph. Hit pause and try to express that whole complex idea yourself. You probably won't remember every single word, and actually, that is exactly the point. You are forcing your brain to find its own words to convey the same meaning. Finally, once you've mastered paragraphs, you move to step 3. You listen to a whole short story or a speech, maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, and then you try to deliver that entire speech on your own from memory. By progressing from 3 seconds to 3 minutes, you're giving your brain an incredibly intense, highly effective speaking workout.
And finally, Section 5, why this actually works, the hidden mechanics. So why does this feel so natural and yield such incredible results? Well, first, because you're consistently listening to and imitating correct English, your brain naturally learns how to form sentences properly. You aren't guessing at word order, you're actually modeling it. Second, you are learning idioms and the real speaking patterns used in day-to-day conversations. And this is a real game changer. Textbook English can be incredibly stiff, right? A textbook might teach you to say, "I am feeling quite exhausted from my studies." But by imitating real speakers, you learn natural phrasing like, "I'm totally burned out." You learn the rhythm of how people actually talk out in the real world. And third, you absorb grammar automatically.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most fascinating aspects of human cognition, implicit learning. Implicit learning is the process where learning happens without your direct awareness. It's truly amazing because this is exactly how toddlers learn the grammar rules of their native language. Think about it. A 3-year-old doesn't sit at a desk studying conjugation charts, yet they learn to speak perfectly. Their brains recognize patterns through constant exposure and repetition. When you use the imitation method, you're hacking this exact same system. You're focused entirely on the communication, on understanding and expressing ideas. You are actively mastering complex grammar, but you aren't even consciously aware that it's happening.
Basically, this means you can finally stop stressing over the present perfect tense. We all know the deep trauma of trying to memorize complex grammar charts. Sitting there, pulling your hair out, trying to understand exactly why a specific tense is used in one tiny, hyper-specific situation. It feels like you're trying to solve a miserable math equation. But language isn't math. Imitation lets you skip that headache completely. You start to use the correct grammar simply because it sounds right to your ear, not because you memorized a rulebook. It is genuinely one of the most freeing, natural ways to internalize a language.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought. That massive roadblock of not having a speaking partner, it's officially gone. You hold the keys to your own progress now. So what will be the first story you imitate today? Will it be a favorite podcast clip, a scene from a movie? Now that you have this easy-to-hard, step-by-step daily practice plan, you have absolutely everything you need to start building real fluency entirely on your own terms. Pick a story, start small, and let your brain do the rest. You've got this, and I'll see you in the next explainer.